Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen. Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political sports and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 34, so whether you're back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It's late Thursday night, February 17th, and I'm in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. Good evening, my tools. I hope that you are doing well and having a good week. My week has been a fun one, a long one, and a fun one. If you have listened to the show for a while, then you are well aware that I am a father to a 5-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. And for the very first time, one of my children has lost a tooth. It happened on Sunday morning. My daughter was eating breakfast before we went to church, eating a sugar powdered donut. And she's had this tooth for a while that has been wiggly. And apparently it came out. She just realized my tooth is not there anymore. Her mother and her began to search for it, only to discover it was nowhere to be found, which leads us to believe that she may have swallowed her tooth, the very first tooth that she's ever lost. And I don't know why, but for me personally, that thought was mortifying. Like, apparently this happens all the time. It's not a big deal at all. Even my older sister said, that happened to me when we were kids. Don't you remember? I certainly do not. But when it comes to my kids, things are just magnified, is what I'm learning as a parent. The joy, the stress, the anxiety, everything as a parent when it comes to issues with your children is magnified. You feel it on a deeper level. I'm learning that now that I'm 5 years into the parenting game. And so the thought of her swallowing that tooth for some reason just mortified me. I was like, oh my word, is that okay? Is that healthy? Is that safe? What's going to happen? I had all these thoughts just swimming around in my head, and my wife was like, chill out, it's fine. So we had to have our first ever visitation by that little fairy that collect the teeth. And we waited for my daughter to go to bed. She actually wrote a note to the tooth fairy. It said, "Dear tooth fairy, I lost my tooth, but I swallowed it." Oh man, it was a cute note. And so we waited till she went to bed, and we were looking for $1, which to me, that's an expensive tooth fairy, because when I was a child, I got a quarter. Every tooth, your boy got a quarter. I was like, hey, if I lose all of them, I might be able to afford a candy bar, some Snickers or something. Sponsored the show, I'm just saying. But we were looking for $1 to put under her pillow. Why? I don't know, because we didn't have a tooth to collect. So, I don't know why the tooth fairy even visited, but hey, I'm a good father. So we were looking for $1, and we couldn't find one anywhere. We couldn't find any quarters. All we could find was a $10 bill. So then we were in a little bit of a predicament. Do we either leave the house at like 9:30 at night and go out into the cold just to get $1. Go buy something, get some cash back just to get $1. Run to the ATM up the road just so we can get $1 to put up under this little girl pillow? Or does she get $10 from the Tooth Fairy? I tried to convince my wife. I was like, look, just write her an IOU. When I was a kid, I remember one time I got an IOU from the Tooth Fairy. It was like, hey, I'll get you back next time. But my wife was not having it. No IOUs for the very first tooth that our child has ever lost. So she got $10 for that first tooth, the one that she swallowed. And the Tooth Fairy left her a very nice note saying that she got an extra special gift since it was her first tooth. So, if my kid lose too many more teeth, I'm going to be in the poorhouse because the Tooth Fairy is expensive. What else? Burger King caught on fire, so that happened in my town. They took flame grilled a little bit to the excess. I drove by, I saw 3 fire trucks with hoses inside and a man on the roof, a fireman on the roof. I don't think they cleaned their grease traps, but that's just me, and I haven't eaten there in about 8 months, so we straight on that. But enough of that. Let's get to some comments and corrections from our last show. Keystone 369, Hanobia 348, Townsend 263. That's right, my babies. Keystone 369. We have now been officially seeking an invite to a Bigfoot festival for over a year. Over a year. Hasn't happened, but we press on. We press on. We're up to 3,000 followers on Twitter now. Big congrats to the show and to all of you for making that happen. You can follow the show on Twitter at InTheShed4. We would love to connect with you over there. Our little show is growing slowly but surely, both in the U.S. and across the globe. We're being heard in over 20 nations now. Shout out to India, of course, which makes up 32% of our listener base. Also France, the U.K., and Australia, who are next up on the list. And I want to extend a special welcome to the family to our listeners in both Mexico and Canada, where we've experienced the most growth the past 2 weeks. Wherever and however you're listening to the show, whether on Good Pods, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, please do us a solid and leave us a 5-star review. If you continue to subscribe, like, review, and share the show, we will continue growing this thing together. On our last episode, we incorrectly said that Barack Obama claimed Sony should not have released the interview. In actuality, he said the opposite. We also made passing reference to an American student detained while visiting North Korea. That student was Otto Warmbier, who unfortunately passed away after being released to American authorities in a coma. And on our last episode, we mentioned the college basketball teams we gave you before the season tipped off, and we accidentally left off Arkansas. We also gave you Arkansas, and they're playing pretty well. We've got a great show for you tonight, but first let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from Seth from Rancho Cucamonga, California. Episode 32 is the first time I've listened to the show. I wanted to write in and tell you how bizarrely satisfying it was listening to a podcast that covered the crisis in Ukraine, the NFL playoffs, and black market mummies on one episode. We'll definitely listen again. Seth, thank you for listening to the show. Yeah, that's what makes us different. That's what makes us stand out. We are a news show, but we gonna hit you with all kinds of stuff. We're not just talking politics. We do a little bit of that, but we dabble in sports. We talk some paranormal news. And if you tune into an episode, you might get everything from Ukraine to NFL playoffs to black market mummies. That's what we do around here. Appreciate you listening to this show, and thanks for writing in. Katie from Utah writes, I enjoyed the discussion on North Korea. It was very enlightening. I learned a lot. I'm glad, Katie. I'm glad that you enjoyed that. Joshua has been on the show a couple times now. He does a great job, always comes prepared. I fact-checked most of what he said, and we missed like one or two small things, but almost everything was on point. And we appreciate Joshua. We'll have him back again. I'm glad you enjoyed that episode. I thought it was a great discussion as well. And Gerald from Humble, Texas. Is that a real place, Gerald? Humble, Texas. Humble. Where's that? Never heard of Humble, Texas. Gerald from Humble, Texas says, Wes, loved the discussion you had with the Bigfoot guy. Pretty cool that he's also from Texas. Enjoy the news, but looking forward to more conversational episodes as well. Thank you, Gerald. Yeah, Bigfoot Bob. We were super excited to have Bob on the show. I've listened to his podcast for a while. I've gotten to know him a little bit, and he was very gracious with his time, with his advice, with his help. And I thought he answered questions well. I thought he represented himself well. A lot of times you hear Bigfoot field researcher and you think, oh boy, this is going to be utter nonsense. I've listened to other episodes where people with even more quote-unquote credentials come on the show, try to explain the science or try to answer questions, and it just doesn't come off well. But that was not the case for Bob. Bob represented himself very well. I thought that he was open and honest. He was very straightforward. Like, I'm not trying to convince anybody, but this is what I've seen and experienced. This is what I believe. And I thought it was a worthwhile episode. We will definitely have more conversational episodes. We have one coming up in a couple weeks I'm very excited about, so stay tuned for that. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics. And let's hit the headlines. Ukraine ally says Western media reports of Russian attack were obviously fake news, writes InfoWars. Maryland's most populous county scraps plans for COVID-19 vaccine passport, reports the Independent Journal Review. Eric Adams' first budget as mayor leaves police funding flat, says NPR. From USA Today, Elizabeth Warren calls for ban on members of Congress trading stock. And finally, Biden must fulfill his promise to protect the black vote, and that is according to the Daily Beast. Our first story in the world of politics, the Biden administration falls back on an old ugly tactic to evade tough questions. It was a reasonable question. On Thursday, State Department spokesperson Ned Price went before reporters and announced the United States had evidence that Russia was planning a false flag attack by Ukrainians to justify an invasion of Ukraine. Associated Press writer Matt Lee asked the obvious necessary follow-up question, what's your evidence for that? Things got testy. If you doubt the credibility of the U.S. government, of the British government, of other governments, and want to, find solace in information that the Russians are putting out, that is for you to do, Price ultimately said after a tense back and forth. It was a non-responsive answer and smacked more than a little bit of McCarthy-era red baiting. You don't trust what we're saying? Maybe you believe the bad guys, huh? But this kind of thing is becoming routine in the Biden administration. Also on Thursday, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki pushed back on a question about civilian casualties in the U.S. air raid that killed ISIS leader Abu Ibrahim al-Hashami al-Qasari. The U.S. alleged that al-Qasari had detonated a bomb that killed the innocents. A reporter again pressed for evidence of the claim. And ISIS is providing accurate information? Psaki shot back. This came a few days after she accused Senator Josh Hawley of parroting a Russian talking point by opposing NATO membership for Ukraine. Let's be clear. When it comes to matters of war and rumors of war, the U.S. government has very little credibility. The tidal wave of information that led to the Iraq War was the most obvious modern example, but it's far from the only one. Just last fall, military leaders called a Kabul drone strike a righteous attack on a terrorist, only to later concede a family of 10 had been killed. Former President Donald Trump's rationale for the assassination of an Iranian leader in 2020 ended up looking pretty flimsy also. This kind of thing happens all the time. No matter which party is running the government, U.S. officials don't get to use the trust us argument on matters of life and death. Not anymore. It's also an old ugly tactic to suggest reporters' sympathies and trusts might be more aligned with America's rivals and enemies, a trick that's a step removed at best from Trump's much more decried attacks on journalists as enemy of the people. It's easy to lob accusations at critics and questioners rather than answer uncomfortable queries, and it's not better or more defensible when a Democratic administration does it. Even in the best of times, politicians and governments will have a prickly relationship with the media. That's fine and even desirable, but red baiting from high officials is never acceptable. Just answer the question. So I thought that was an interesting take. This happened a week or two ago in the continuing crisis between Ukraine, Russia, and America. And this official that the Biden administration trotted out to answer questions from the media, I don't know if he was expecting to answer questions or if he was just prepared to say this is what it is and leave. But the man said, we have evidence that Russia is going to plan a false flag attack and blame it on Ukraine so that they have the right to invade. And that sounds pretty conspiratorial, does it not? Like, that's the kind of thing that if you say on a podcast or a radio broadcast, you get labeled as a right-wing extremist. And here it's coming from the president's spokesperson. Now, obviously, false flag attacks and things like that, governments actually have done those things in the past. But the natural follow-up question to a statement like that is, what is the evidence? How have we gathered this information? Who is it that is saying this is going to happen? And when a reporter asked that question, it wasn't a reporter from Fox News. It wasn't somebody from OAN or from Newsmax. This was a guy from the AP. This is a legitimate investigative journalist. He asked this question, this normal, typical, standard follow-up question. And the answer was dismissive. The answer was hostile. And the answer sort of implied that the journalist, just for asking a question, was somehow on the side of Russia. And this is the type of behavior from a president's cabinet, from a president's administration, that when Donald Trump was in office would be derided universally by everyone in the media, by all journalists. This would be derided. How can you attack journalism? Journalism is supposed to be the watchdog of government. This is our job. It's a very fair question. And there were a few people who stood up for this journalist, but not nearly enough. And our government basically just saying, trust us. Like, we're on the verge of war with a country that also has nuclear weapons. And they say, we have evidence that this is going to happen. There's this attack that's coming. This is going to happen on the 16th of February. And Russia's getting ready to invade. And Ukraine says, we don't think that they are. And then we ask follow-up questions. How do we know? Where's this information coming from? And the response is, what, are you for the Russians? You better just trust us. Take our word for it. Nah, fam. Hard pass. This type of behavior isn't acceptable. Not from the Trump administration, not from the Biden administration, not from Republicans, not from Democrats. This is a part of the problem. Journalists, and as we know, I am one of those, according to you, my people. It's a journalist's job to get the facts out on the table, to ask the tough questions, to ask follow-up questions, to give the information to the people so the people can know what to do with it, so the people can decide what to do with it, so the people can make sense of what's going on in their world and what their government is up to. And this trend is emerging in the current administration when they receive completely valid questions from the media to become hostile so quickly and to push back on it and not even answer the question. It's alarming and it's not helpful. And to come from an administration that promised to be the most transparent in U.S. history makes that claim seem kind of like a joke. So look, I get the emails. I get them all the time. I tell you all the time. I get messages from y'all that say that I just despise Joe Biden, that I'm a Trump lover. Some people message in and say that I despise Trump and that I'm a Biden supporter. I'm not either. Whoever is in the White House, I want them to succeed because I want our country to succeed. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Biden. Neither one of them earned my vote, okay? But I want him to keep his promises. I want him to do well for our country. I want us to prosper economically. I want us to deal with the coronavirus in a way that's both empathetic and sensible. I want Republicans and Democrats to reach across the aisle and work together for the betterment of the American people. And I want the administration to be honest about what's going on. You don't have to give away classified information. You don't have to reveal sources, but you can at least answer the man's question. And if you can't, then get somebody at the podium who can. Our next story in the world of politics Investigators say there was a very realistic possibility South Dakota Attorney General knew he hit and killed a man with his car. He's still running for re-election. That's right, my babies. Buckle up your seatbelts. We're about to talk some Jason Ravnsborg. And if you've listened to this show since the beginning, or if you've gone back and heard the episodes, you know that nobody has covered this outside of the state of South Dakota like we have. We've been on this since the beginning. Right after it happened, we've stuck with it. We've updated the case. And I'm tired. I'm tired of this man. I'm not a screamer. I'm not a yeller on this podcast. I don't try to enrage my listeners. It's not about outrage. We don't do hyperbolics on this show. But if there's any story that makes me want to scream and yell and pound the desk and release my inner Alex Jones, and it's this story. It's this story. South Dakota Attorney General Jason Ravnsborg, who was found guilty of 2 misdemeanors, y'all, in connection with a fatal car crash, will continue running for a second term despite an ongoing impeachment investigation and calls to resign. On the night of September 12, 2020, Ravnsborg called the police saying he hit something that was in the middle of the road. Pay attention to those words. He hit something that was in the middle of the road. The next day, he had returned to the site of the crash, finding the body of 55-year-old Joe Beaver, according to the video interview with police. Ravnsborg insists he didn't see anything the night of the accident, but investigators say they found Beaver's DNA on the car's windshield and his glasses inside of Ravnsborg's car. Ravnsborg pleaded no contest in 2021, receiving no jail time for the fatal crash, and instead faced misdemeanor charges, according to the Associated Press. Investigators from the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation concluded that there was a very realistic possibility Ravnsborg was aware that he killed the man, announcing it Wednesday to a committee of South Dakota lawmakers considering his impeachment, Stephen Groves of the Associated Press reported. The North Dakota Special Agent Arnie Rummel told South Dakota lawmakers Wednesday that Ravnsborg walked by a flashlight that's on. There's a body that's laying within 2 feet of the roadway, and obviously deceased, and he's all white. There isn't any blood being pumped in him. And the fact is that I believe that he had to have seen him, he added. Investigators also cited interviews with police from after the accident, which can be viewed online. Despite his ongoing impeachment probe and calls to resign, including from Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, Ravnsborg continues to seek re-election as Attorney General. As Attorney General, as the top cop in the state, the one whose job it is to uphold the law. The Bible says that you will be known by your fruits. And even if you're not a religious person, even if you don't believe in a God, you can agree with that sentiment. That people can tell you who they are as much as they want. People can claim and project a certain image. But ultimately, your deeds will bear out whether that image is accurate or not. And will show the world what type of character you have. What type of morality you have as a person. And we have seen Jason Ravnsborg's true nature and lack of character bear itself out in this case. And it's disgusting. And it's sickening. Okay, so you make a mistake. I believe it was an accident. I don't believe he hit the man on purpose. It was an accident. He accidentally hit somebody with this car. Terrible, awful, tragic mistake. And what does he do? Does he face up to it? Does he call an ambulance? No. He covers it up immediately. He protects his job immediately. He worries about his future and career immediately. He calls the police and lies. I think I hit something that was in the middle of the road. Maybe it was a deer. I don't know. The man's glasses are inside of your car. The man's DNA is on your windshield. It's pretty hard to hit a person, even at nighttime, have them roll up on the windshield of your car and their glasses wind up inside your vehicle and not realize it wasn't a deer, don't you think? So not only does he lie from the beginning, but phone records show that seconds prior to the impact, this man was scrolling news sites on his cell phone. So Joe Beaver's car had broken down and was on the side of the road. And he was walking, presumably to get help or to get gas or to find someone. He was walking on the side of the road with the flashlight. So the phone records show that Jason Ravnsborg was scrolling on his phone on this country road at night on the way back from a political fundraiser. And he strikes Joe Beaver with his car. Not in the middle of the road, but in the shoulder. Not a deer, but a person. Then, after calling and lying to police, somehow, the next day, he was allowed to come back with the local sheriff and search the scene. And just so happened to be the one that found the body. Have you ever watched a crime television show? Have you ever seen CSI or Law and Order? Is it not a little bit suspicious to anybody that this man who calls and says, I hit something with my car, I think it was a deer, and he comes back the next morning and happens to know exactly where to look immediately, and he finds the man's body? So he lied about not knowing that it was a person. The man's glasses are in your car, his DNA is on your hood, he was walking on the side of the road with a flashlight that was clearly visible. You lied about it. He was allowed to come back the next day. He's the one that found the man's body. And from there, it only gets worse. Even though it was his reckless driving and his behavior that is provable by the evidence that resulted in this man's death. And even though he is the Attorney General of the state of South Dakota, the state's top cop, and should be held to a higher standard, as so often is the case, he is held to a lower standard than your average person. And he gets charged with 2 misdemeanors. Doesn't even get charged with crimes that could put him in jail for any amount of time, even though he killed somebody with his car because of his negligence and then lied about it to cover it up. 2 misdemeanors. And it gets even worse. The lack of character of this man is astounding. As they get ready to go to trial, Jason Ravnsborg petitions the court to allow into evidence the fact that this man that he hit and killed, Joe Beaver, was taking antidepressants. Like somehow, because this man struggled with mental health, you should be absolved for the fact that you were scrolling your phone and not paying attention to the road, hit and killed a man, then lied about it. They tried to smear him. They tried to make him look crazy. And then his cousin, Joe Beaver's cousin that lives across the country, that lives in the Northeast, that hasn't been in contact with him, hasn't known him for years, comes out of the woodwork with the Ravnsborg defense to say, I believe that my cousin was suicidal and that maybe he was really depressed and that he threw himself in front of the car and he had said something about that's how he would end his life. Hey, we see you. I don't know what type of deal you got. I'm not alleging anything. I'm just saying what it looked like. His family that was there with him in South Dakota didn't say those things, didn't allege those things. The evidence on the roadway shows that the car swerved into the median, into the shoulder, not in the middle of the road. Wasn't nobody running out into the middle of the road. So not only do you have somebody that made a fatal mistake and an error in judgment that cost a man's life, not only did he then lie about it, not only did he refuse accountability, not only did he try to smear the person that he killed, the life that he took, but now the man even has the audacity, the unmitigated gall, to run for office as the top police officer in the state again. This man deserves to be in prison. He's a disgrace to the office. He's a disgrace to police. He's a disgrace to elected officials. He's a disgrace to the Republican Party. He's a man of no character, and we know it because his fruits have borne it out. His actions have told us who he is, not once, but not twice, not 3 times, but every step of the way. We can clearly see Jason Ravnsborg for who he is and for what he is. And it's a poor excuse of an individual. And I don't usually go personal on this show. If you listen, you know that. I don't go personal. I keep it middle of the road. I don't lob attacks against people's character. I talk about their actions and their policies, and this is different. A life has been taken. A family has been grieving. This man has used his position and his power and his influence to taunt justice and to fleece accountability, and now expects to be elected again. And I hope that the people of South Dakota, I hope that they're better than this. I hope that they won't stand for this. I hope that they'll elect anybody other than Jason Ravnsborg. We'll continue to follow this story. We'll continue to update you as information becomes available. We've covered it from the beginning. We're going to continue to cover it. It gets me worked up. It gets me upset. It gets me angry. And it should. It should make us angry. It should make us indignant. This man's taking advantage of the people. He's taking a life. And he's dishonest about it. He refuses accountability. We're going to do our best to hold him accountable. Our next story in the world of politics, Durham alleges cyber analysts exploited access to Trump White House server. John Durham, the special counsel appointed under former President Trump to investigate the FBI's probing of Russian interference in the 2016 election, alleged in court that a tech executive exploited access to White House data in order to find damning information about Trump. In a court filing submitted Friday, Durham's office said the executive, who is referred to in legal filings only as Tech Executive 1, but has been identified in a news report as Rodney Jaffe, used his company's access to non-public government domain name system data through a pending cybersecurity contract as he was analyzing supposed links between the Trump organization and a Russian bank. Tech Executive One's employer, Internet Company One, had come to access and maintain dedicated servers for the executive office of the president as a part of a sensitive arrangement whereby it provided DNS resolution services to the EOP, Durham's office wrote, using an acronym for the White House's Executive Office of the President. Tech Executive One and his associates exploited this arrangement by mining the EOP's DNS traffic and other data for the purpose of gathering derogatory information about Donald Trump. An attorney representing Jaffe did not immediately respond when asked for comment. The filing came in Durham's prosecution against Michael Sussman, an attorney who represented Jaffe and worked on behalf of the Democrats in Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign for a single count of making false statements to the FBI's general counsel. Sussman is accused of falsely telling the FBI's top attorney in a 2016 meeting that he was not representing any client when he presented data that researchers believe could have established a connection between Trump's business and the Moscow-based Alpha Bank. Sussman has pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. His attorney did not immediately respond when asked for comment. So this is a story that has been trending online this week and that has garnered a lot of attention from conservative news outlets, and that only has received passing attention from those on the left. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton spoke at a gathering of the New York Democratic Convention and, of course, denied any wrongdoing or connection to these allegations. She said this is more of a Trump witch hunt against her. I've read reports from Fox News and others on the right who say that this is damning information that's worse than Watergate, that shows that Hillary Clinton and her campaign spied on President Trump and violated the national security of our country. I've read reports on the left that say that this is complete hogwash, that it amounts to absolutely nothing and has no connection to Hillary Clinton whatsoever. This is one of those stories and one of those situations where the hyper-partisanship that exists in our news media today and in our country today make it very difficult to suss out what is what. and to actually figure out what this information means, what these allegations mean, if there's merit to it. The article that I chose to share with you did not come from Fox News. It did not come from MSNBC. It came from The Hill. The Hill that is more middle of the road, maybe slightly left sometimes, depending on which opinion piece and who's writing it. But certainly not a conservative news organization. And I thought they did a pretty fair job of just laying out what the claim is. The allegation is that this individual who was billing the Clinton campaign, who was doing work for the Clinton campaign, that he took advantage of his access that he had to the servers, the data, the search information in the executive office of the president, that he had access to that because of a cybersecurity contract, that he took advantage of that to search out connections between Donald Trump and Russia, with the implication that he was doing it to benefit Hillary Clinton and her campaign to be elected as president. Right now, all this is an allegation that has come out in a court case against a lawyer that had connections to the campaign who made a false claim allegedly to intelligence officials. I don't think the left is being honest with you when they tell you that there's nothing to see here. Do not pay attention to the man behind the curtain. When Hillary Clinton says this is nothing more than a witch hunt, I don't think that that's a very fair representation of the facts as presented. I also am not certain that the way this is being painted on the right, by Sean Hannity, by the talking heads at Fox, that this completely vindicates Donald Trump, that he was entirely right, that he was being spied on all the time, that they violated national security, that I'm not sure that this goes there either. This is worth paying attention to. We need to get to the bottom of what this is and what it means and what exactly happened and who put him up to it and why. If true, it appears to be a dirty political trick at best. And if there is not enough corroborating evidence to show that this in fact is something that happened, I imagine that will come out in court proceedings in the near future. On In the Shed, we are not a Trump-centric show. I'm not going to throw his name out every episode just to get ratings. I'm not going to tell you he's the worst person to ever live just so that you'll like me. I'm not going to celebrate him as the savior of the nation just so you'll like me. We try to give you what's happening in the world. We try to give you what we do know, not allegations, not maybe this or that. This is the most outrageous thing. We just try to tell you this is what's going on and trust you to make sense of it for yourself. And I don't think that the mainstream media is giving fair representations of this story. I don't think this necessarily means that there is a deep state that was trying to overthrow the Trump presidency. I also don't think it's fair to say that there's no merit to this story whatsoever. It might not be the biggest deal in the world right now, but it's something. There's certainly smoke, and we need to investigate and see if there's fire. And if there is fire, who provided the kindling? If this person is on the Clinton campaign payroll and was doing something that was illegal, accessing information that they were not supposed to have access to, or sharing it with folks that they were not supposed to contractually, somebody should be held accountable. So we need to get to the bottom of it. We need to keep up with it. We need to pay attention to it. We need to watch this court filing. We need to wait and see what Durham has, what he comes out with, what corroborating information is present. This is something. It is a story. If somebody tells you it's not a story, do not trust them. If somebody tells you that this is 100% fact, worse than Watergate, that Donald Trump was spied on, if you hear language like that, maybe don't trust them. The truth is, some allegations have been made. They seem credible. They are alarming. And we do need to get to the bottom of it. And that's where we stand as of right now. Our last story in the world of politics Tiger King Joe Exotic resentenced to 21 years in prison. A federal judge resentenced Tiger King Joe Exotic to 21 years in prison on Friday, reducing his punishment by just a year, despite pleas from the former zookeeper for leniency as he begins treatment for early-stage cancer. "Please don't make me die in prison waiting for a chance to be free," he tearfully told a federal judge who resentenced him on a murder-for-hire charge. Joe Exotic, whose real name is Joseph Maldonado Passage, was convicted in a case involving animal welfare activist Carol Baskin. Both were featured in Netflix Tiger King Murder, Mayhem, and Madness. Wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, Maldonado Passage, 58, still had his trademark mullet hairstyle, but the bleached blonde had faded to brown and gray. Baskin and her husband, Howard Baskin, that dude is so strange, also attended the proceedings, and she said she was fearful that Maldonado Passage could threaten her. "He continues to harbor intense feelings of ill will toward me," she told the judge. Baskin said even with Maldonado Passage in prison, she's continued to receive vile, abusive, and threatening communications over the last 2 years. She told the judge that she believes Maldonado Passage poses an even more serious threat to her now that he has a larger group of supporters because of the popularity of the Netflix series. Maldonado Passage's attorney told the judge their client is suffering from stage 1 prostate cancer, along with a disease that compromises his immune system, making him particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. Stage 1 prostate cancer means it has been detected early and hasn't spread. Maldonado Passage previously said that he planned to delay treatment until after his resentencing. Federal officials have said Maldonado Passage will need up to 8 weeks of radiation treatments and would be unable to travel during the treatment. His attorney, Amy Hanna, told the judge that he's not receiving the proper medical care inside the federal prison system and that a lengthy prison sentence is a death sentence for Joe that he does not deserve. Prosecutors also told the judge Friday that Maldonado Passage received a disciplinary write-up in September for being in possession of a contraband cell phone and unauthorized headphones that was not included in his pre-sentencing report. Polk added that Maldonado Passage had 4 previous disciplinary write-ups, although he described those as relatively minor and not violent. Friday's court proceedings came about after a federal appeals court ruled last year that the prison term he's serving on a murder-for-hire conviction should be shortened. Supporters packed the courtroom, some wearing animal print masks and shirts that read, "Free Joe Exotic." His attorney said they would appeal the resentencing and petition for a new trial. The defense submitted a series of attachments that show excessive government involvement in the creation of the offense for which he's been convicted, attorney Molly Palmer told reporters after the hearing. "We're going to continue our post-conviction litigation, but we did preview for the court the evidence we have through our post-conviction investigation." The former zookeeper was sentenced in January 2020 to 22 years in prison after he was convicted of trying to hire 2 different men to kill Baskin. A 3-judge panel of the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with Maldonado Passage that the court should have treated them as one conviction at a sentencing because they were both involved in the same goal of killing Baskin, who runs a rescue sanctuary for big cats in Florida, and had criticized Maldonado Passage's treatment of animals. Prosecutors said Maldonado Passage offered $10,000 to an undercover FBI agent to kill Baskin during a recorded December 2017 meeting. In the recording, he told the agent, "Just like follow her into a mall parking lot and just cap her and drive off." Maldonado Passage's attorney have said that their client, who once operated a zoo in Wynnewood, Oklahoma, about 65 miles south of Oklahoma City, was not being serious. Maldonado Passage, who maintains his innocence, also was convicted of killing 5 tigers, selling tiger cubs, and falsifying wildlife records. A free Joe Exotic. I'm just saying, free Joe Exotic, and I think maybe we'll get Joe Exotic on the podcast later this year. Maybe one of our standalone episodes will be a jailhouse interview with Joe Exotic. I think that he would come on the show. But listen, I watched Tiger King. Carol Baskin is not a likable individual, at least not how she's presented on the show. And the thing is, I have no trouble believing that Joe Exotic is not a good person. The way that he treated employees and people and some of the things that he did were absolutely indefensible. Okay. He deserved to be held accountable for killing those tigers, for illegally selling tiger cubs. All of that is true. But as we say on this show, multiple things can be true at once. Do I believe that Joe Exotic broke the law in the way that he dealt with animals? Absolutely. Do I believe that Joe Exotic treated people in a way that took advantage of them and was not kind? Absolutely. Do I believe that Joe Exotic actually tried to hire people to kill Carol Baskin? That I'm not so sure about. That I don't know. Granted, I was not in the courtroom for the court case, okay? And they do have him on recording telling this man that he would pay him to kill her. But shoot, on the Netflix series, they had him on camera saying, "This is Carol Baskin," and blowing stuff up and shooting things all the time. I think if I had to take a guess, that Joe Exotic was mostly all talk when it came to trying to get Carol Baskin killed. I'm one of the 35 people that have actually watched Tiger King 2. It was not near as successful as Tiger King. But on Tiger King 2, you have all of the people involved in the conviction of Joe Exotic taking back everything that they said, saying that they were just saving themselves, that they had to get a deal so they didn't get in trouble, saying that it was a setup, that Joe never really intended to have her killed, that he was all talk, that he just sort of joked around that way, that he never paid them. Even the man that he allegedly paid, Alan Glover, came on there and said that he would do whatever he had to do, even if it meant him getting put in jail, to get Joe out. You could tell from the first trial that this judge is not a fan of Joe Exotic. And the Superior Court determined that the sentence he got was not fair because they treated these multiple charges as different attempts to have somebody killed when it was the same person, and deemed that he needed to be resentenced. So the judge took his 22 years and knocked it down to 21. Look, I don't think that Joe Exotic is a hero. I don't think that he should be worshipped. I don't think that his celebrity is necessarily beneficial to society in any way. But I do think that probably the government had a lot to do with him getting arrested for the charges that he did, and that some unsavory characters around him, like Jeff Lowe and that big dude that rides the jet ski, I think they kind of did him in so that they could stay free. And I'm not saying that Joe Exotic deserves no punishment for his wrongdoing. I'm just saying that 21 years is probably a little bit excessive. And if 2022 is going to be like 2021 or 2020, if we're going to be on the verge of war with Russia and experience all this inflation and everything in the world is turned upside down, at least we could free Joe Exotic. I mean, if nothing else, it would be really entertaining. Because you know that man will be on television immediately. You know the networks would have him. Somebody would have a new show coming out featuring that man. And in a way, it's kind of ironic because all he ever wanted was celebrity. And he finally found it. And he's never even seen Tiger King. He's in prison with prostate cancer. Just got divorced. He deserves accountability. He should be in prison for the way that he treated animals. For the illegal things that he did. Just not sure that paying to have Carol Baskin killed was really one of those things. What do you think? Email the show. Get at us at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com and let us know if you think that this is an excessive punishment. If you think that he's actually guilty. If you think he deserves an even more aggressive sentencing or a new trial. Email the show. Find us on Twitter at InTheShed4 and let us know what you think about this story. That's all for the world of politics. Let's switch to the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Little progress made in latest MLB labor talks. Jim Harbaugh reaches new deal to continue coaching Michigan through 2026. Anthony Davis likely out 4 weeks with ankle injury. Knicks cough up a 28-point lead and lose to Brooklyn. Tristan Thompson to join Bulls after Pacers exit. Derek Dooley lands job on Nick Saban's coaching staff at Alabama. College basketball's officiating problem is getting worse, according to ESPN's Jay Billis. Rutgers men's basketball wins fourth straight over ranked opponent. Saints to keep longtime offensive coordinator Carmichael, and world's oldest Pats fan dies in Maine at age 106. On tonight's show, the only news that we are going to cover in the world of sports is Super Bowl 56. We're going to put a wrap on the NFL season. Of course, the Super Bowl was won by the Los Angeles Rams. They beat Joe Burrow and the Bengals by a score of 23-20, scoring a late touchdown. Our prediction was close. We predicted that the Bengals would win with a score of 27-24. I thought Joe Burrow would lead a late drive and they would kick a field goal to win. And we were within a hair of that actually happening. The Rams took the lead. They missed the extra point, but they took a 23-20 lead, and the Bengals got the ball back with a minute left or a minute and a half left, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. The Bengals are going to go down the field, score a touchdown, and we're going to have almost the exact score. But it didn't happen. Cooper Kupp's late touchdown grab lifted the Rams to a Super Bowl victory. Matt Stafford threw for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, along with 2 interceptions. Joe Burrow threw for 263 and a touchdown. But Cooper Kupp took home the MVP honors. He caught 8 passes for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Rams never really could get the running game going. And in the clutch, it was Cooper Kupp. He's been the man all season long for the Rams. He's been the best receiver in professional football this year. And when the Rams had to have points late in the game, it was Matt Stafford and it was Cooper Kupp. The Bengals knew that the ball was going to Cooper Kupp, and somehow the man still got open. Stafford still was able to find him time and time again. Aaron Donald and the Rams defense was a problem for the Bengals up front the whole game. The Rams couldn't run, but the Bengals, they couldn't protect. They couldn't keep Joe Burrow safe. And this was the matchup that people who predicted the Rams to win highlighted, was the Rams defensive front against the Bengals offensive line. And the Bengals have done some work to try and improve their offensive line coming into the season. But to make it to the Super Bowl and to have your quarterback sacked 7 times, it just stunts your offense. It stunts your offense. You had a situation where the Bengals had to radically change who they are and how they operate in a championship game. With the Super Bowl trophy on the line, they couldn't do the things that they do best. What they do best is play action pass. They throw the ball down the field. Joe Burrow from the shotgun, pushing the ball down the field vertically to C.J. Uzomah, to Jamar Chase, and they just could not do that in this game. He didn't have the protection he needed. He didn't have the time. He didn't turn the ball over. It still looked like the Bengals may pull off a win. Their defense played admirably. But instead, the Rams won the Super Bowl on their home field. Sean McVay at 36 becomes the youngest Super Bowl winning coach in history. And Joe Burrow and the Bengals had a fantastic season. Few people thought that they could go this far, that they could do the things they did. He has cemented himself as one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. I know he's only played 2 seasons, but to see what he did and how he raised the level of all those around him this year in Cincinnati is absolutely incredible. This is a franchise that has been putrid, that has struggled to make the playoffs. In the years that they have made the playoffs, they lose in the first round all the time. And Joe Burrow shows up on the scene, and even coming off of an injury, to do what he's done for them is phenomenal. They have a young coach that they have signed to an extension. They have a lot of talent. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in this offseason, how much money they're willing to spend to upgrade their offensive line, how many draft picks they use to upgrade their offensive line, what defensive pieces they put in place as they continue to try to improve on that side of the ball. But even more interesting than the Bengals to me is what the Rams will look like going forward. And I was rooting for the Bengals. I'm a Joe Burrow fan. I wanted the underdog to win. But I can't help but be happy for Matt Stafford. This man spent 13 years in NFL purgatory in Detroit. And look, I grew up thinking that the Lions were one of the teams worth watching because I like to watch Barry Sanders run the football. Every Thanksgiving, as long as I can remember, I've watched the Lions. I don't despise the Lions, but let's be real. Let's keep it 100. That's one of the worst franchises in all of professional sports. Matt Stafford came out of college as one of the top quarterbacks that there was, and he played 13 years for a losing franchise. And he put up good stats, and he threw a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, and people never mentioned him as a top 5, top 7, top 8, top 10 quarterback because he lost all the time. He gets out from under Detroit, and the very first year, he eliminates Tom Brady for the last time, and he wins the Super Bowl. That's an incredible story. So you can't help but be happy for Matt Stafford. He deserves it. Joe Burrow hopefully has a long career ahead of him. Maybe he'll have another opportunity in the future. But Matt Stafford deserves the win. But even so, it's going to be interesting to see what the Rams look like moving forward. They paid a lot of people. They kind of had the attitude and the game plan. It doesn't matter if we overpay, if we bump up against the salary cap. We don't care what's going on. We want to win the Super Bowl. It's being played in our city. We want to win. They made trades. They signed free agents. They did all kinds of things that were very interesting. They accumulated talent, and it worked out. But now who are they going to pay? Who's going to be willing to take a hometown discount? Who's going to come back motivated next year? Are they going to be able to access any more draft picks? They've traded away a lot of them. How are they going to build for the future while maintaining for the present? Are Matt Stafford, Sean McVay, and Aaron Donald all on board for next season? Are they all motivated? Are they on the same page? Because at least 2 of the 3 have mentioned the possibility of retirement. It's going to be interesting to see. Usually when we talk Super Bowl, we also talk Super Bowl commercials. I think last year we did like a top 5 countdown of Super Bowl commercials. Gotta be honest, only saw a couple Super Bowl commercials that I even thought were remotely good. Was very disappointed in the crop of Super Bowl commercials this year. Something I was not disappointed in was the Super Bowl halftime show. And I know that every single year, no matter who performs, it's going to be deemed controversial. People didn't like it when Shakira and J-Lo were shaking their butt. People thought Maroon 5 sucked. People said Bruno Mars was cultural appropriation. There's always some reason that people want to complain about the Super Bowl halftime show. But hey, I thought it was super dope. I enjoyed the homage to hip-hop. You know, it's one of those things where you would have liked to have seen more songs by each of the artists. I would have loved for Eminem to do some other songs. I would have loved to hear more from Snoop, more from Kendrick. But I thought as an homage to hip-hop, it was a beautiful thing. When 50 Cent popped out, I burst into laughter. I thought that was cool. When Dr. Dre played on the piano a little bit of I Ain't Mad At You as an homage to Tupac, I thought that was really cool and appropriate. And to see one of the biggest sports leagues in the world actually embrace music that reflects a culture that resonates with so many of the athletes that play the sport, I thought that was cool. And, you know, I saw all the articles, people mad that Snoop Dogg smoked a little bit of weed before he came on stage, and people that say that Dr. Dre is a criminal, and people who were mad at Eminem, and blah, 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 blah. And I saw a whole bunch of old white people from my hometown post on Facebook, puking emojis, and talk about how the halftime show made them sick, and y'all might be racist. Because it's one thing if you're just saying that that's not my type of music, or, you know, I would have preferred something different, or I didn't get into the show. But what was there that made you sick? Why post an emoji of someone throwing up? Why talk about how disgusting it was? What was disgusting? The fact that it was music that you don't understand or a culture that you don't resonate with? You might be racist. Whole bunch of y'all. I thought it was a great show. That's music I grew up on. Those are songs I grew up on. I had a young person watching the Super Bowl halftime show at my house, probably 11 or 12 years old, and he goes, I don't know these songs. Do you know these songs? Yes, every word. 50 Cent was doing his thing, and the kid goes, when did this song come out? And I was like, well, when I was about your age. He said, how long ago was that? And I said, 20 years. About 20 years. And it's something when you say, finally, the Super Bowl has music for young people, and realize that you are not young people anymore. That show was for everybody mama, everybody auntie. That show was for me. Because I know there was a lot of kids, a lot of children out here that figured out that their parents, they ain't know their parents as well as they thought they did. Because we were straight getting it during that halftime show. I was hoping for some gin and juice. Was hoping for the entire Forgot About Dre song. But, hey, that halftime show was, as the kids say, lit. Is that what they still say that? I don't know. It was dope. I enjoyed it. I thought it was my favorite halftime show in recent memory. It was pretty cool when Prince did his thing and it actually rained. Like, that's hard to top. But I really enjoyed it. Other news in the NFL world, the Brian Flores lawsuit. Coaching carousel happens at the end of every year. This year, Brian Flores was fired by the Miami Dolphins, despite the fact that he's the only coach that they've had recently to win football games. He had a winning record 2 years in a row. They play in a tough division. They didn't make the playoffs, but I think most of us were pretty shocked when they fired him. That team definitely got better while he was there. He seemed like a good candidate for other jobs. He interviewed for a few of them, was mentioned as a finalist for others. He did not get them, and a lawsuit has been filed. A lawsuit alleging coordinated acts of racism in hiring practices by NFL owners. And this all came about because of a text message from Bill Belichick. This is old news. I know you heard about this, but Bill Belichick sends a text message to Brian Flores thinking that he's sending it to Brian Daboll, who got hired by the New York Giants. So both Brian Flores and Brian Daboll, who is white, Brian Flores, who is African American, both of them have a history of working for Bill Belichick. So after Brian Daboll had interviewed for the job, but before Brian Flores had actually even interviewed, Bill Belichick sends a text message to Brian Flores, thinking he's sending it to Brian Daboll, saying, congratulations, I hear you're getting the job. And Brian Flores responds, Coach, have you heard something that I haven't? I'm going to interview on Thursday. And Belichick says, oops, wrong Brian, yo. So apparently, at least from appearances, the Giants had already decided on Brian Daboll, had already behind the scenes made the decision to hire him. But we're still going to bring Brian Flores in for an interview to satisfy the Rooney Rule. The rule that exists in the NFL where when you have a head coach opening, you have to interview at least one African American candidate because representation of black coaches in the NFL has been lacking, well, forever. Currently, there are only 2 African American head coaches in the NFL. 2 were let go this offseason after a winning season in one place and only a year in the other. And this is going to be an incredibly interesting story to keep an eye on, because Brian Flores is willing to essentially tank his career to do what he believes is right. It's going to be hard for an NFL team to hire Brian Flores as a head coach. He may become somewhat radioactive after this. And NFL owners, they're a club of billionaires. They don't take kindly to things like this. Brian Flores is probably going to get the Colin Kaepernick treatment. He's probably going to be blackballed over this. And he had to have known that, and yet he still filed this lawsuit. And I gotta be honest, I think that it's an incredibly brave thing to do. We've covered racism in the NFL on this show in the past. There's no doubt that it has existed there for years when it comes to hiring practices both in the coaching ranks, in the coordinating ranks, when it comes to hiring African-American GMs, when it comes to who teams are sold to, when it comes to the perception of black quarterbacks in the league. It's taken a long time. It's taken a lot longer than it should have for people to understand that just because somebody's skin color looks different or because they have a different style of quarterbacking, that they can also be successful and sometimes even better. That maybe skin color doesn't really affect if you're intelligent enough to play the position, or if you can sit in the pocket, or if you can be a good quarterback. We've seen these things in the past in the NFL. There's only 2 black coaches. There's 0 black owners. So I think what Brian Flores is doing is brave and risky. Most things that are brave are risky. But this is something that's been building for a long time. It's something that's going to eventually have to come to a head. And this lawsuit may force the issue. It may make the NFL actually take honest inventory. They may not have a choice. What can be done to make sure that there's some equity in the NFL? Not equity of outcome, but of opportunity at least. In a league that an overwhelming majority of the players are African American, what can we do to ensure that qualified candidates also have opportunities when it comes to coaching football teams and working in the front office? Again, I want to see how this plays out, but there's certainly smoke and has been for years, and it appears that Brian Flores is going to be the one to pull the fire alarm. In other NFL news, Tom Brady has retired. On the episode where we had Josh on a couple episodes ago, Tom Brady had just lost in the playoffs. And I said, Tom Brady is out of the playoffs, but he's not done yet. Less than 24 hours later, the news breaks that Tom Brady is done. Sometimes we don't get it right, do we? Tom Brady retires as the most accomplished player in NFL history. That's all there is to it. He's the most accomplished player in NFL history. There might be other players that are more talented, other quarterbacks that have more natural gifting, but nobody that has won like Tom Brady. Nobody that has impacted the franchises he's been a part of like Tom Brady. Nobody that has taken very, very, very average receiving cores and elevated the players like Tom Brady. And for most of his career, I was not a Tom Brady fan. But in the last couple years, I really have just developed an admiration for the discipline that man has in his personal life in order to be good at football. And in his professional life, the way that he takes care of his body, the way that he works out with his receivers, the leadership that he provides in the locker room, and just to be honest, the fact that he could still play so well at age 44, win a Super Bowl at 43. Like, to somebody that's now on the other side of 30, like that's pretty inspiring to me. I told y'all, I got sore from playing kickball, and this man out here winning Super Bowls. It's crazy. He did say in an interview on a podcast that never say never when it comes to the idea of him possibly coming back in the future. But Tom Brady is done. And he deserves it. He deserves to live his life. He's 44. Hopefully he's got over half of his life left. He's got business opportunities, a beautiful family to spend time with, and a Hall of Fame career. At the beginning of the football season, we did make 7 bold predictions when it came to the NFL season. Now that the season is over, we can take inventory on those predictions. Our first prediction was that Jalen Hurts does not finish the year as the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. We whiffed on that one. Jalen Hurts had a great season. We did not get that correct. Number 2, we said that Joe Burrow would win Comeback Player of the Year. Correct. Number 3, we predicted that the Washington football team would win the NFC East. They did not. That was the Cowboys. We were incorrect there. Number 4, we predicted that Patrick Mahomes would not win the MVP. We were correct there. That's going to go to Aaron Rodgers. Number 5, we said that this would be the last year for Matt Ryan in Atlanta and Russell Wilson in Seattle. That is still to be determined. We still don't know. I still think that one might pan out to be true, but we'll see. Number 6, we said that Justin Fields would start a majority of the season for the Chicago Bears and that they would make the playoffs. We were right about Justin Fields starting. We were very wrong about the Bears making the playoffs. Justin Fields, his performance was uneven, up and down. He showed flashes at times. The way that team was coached this year and the way that they underperformed on the other side of the football was remarkable. So we got half of one correct right there. And the 7th prediction that we made was that the Cowboys will be looking for a new football coach. And, of course, they are not. They have retained Coach McCarthy, even though a lot of Cowboy fans would agree that maybe they should be looking for a new coach. So out of 6 predictions, we got 2.5 correct, which is like 42%. And we still have the Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson prediction to be determined, which if we get that right, that would bump us up to 50%. When you start making predictions, it's a tough racket. It's a hard thing. We don't always get them right, but we try. And at least we're honest about the things that we got wrong. We keep it a buck with you. We'll tell you, hey, this is where we were right. This is where we were wrong. So 2.5 out of 6, not fantastic results. But to make those predictions before the season even kicked off, not bad results either. Next week, we'll talk some college football. We'll talk some NBA, trade deadline, second half of the season stuff. But that's it for sports this week. We want to put a bow on the NFL season. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of the paranormal. For our first story in the world of the paranormal, we go to the great state of Pennsylvania. Mystery animal found in Pennsylvania escaped shelter by chewing open window, stunning the keepers. A mystery animal that baffled experts in Pennsylvania has escaped from a wildlife rescue by chewing through a window. The creature was found cold and shivering by Christina Eith near her home in Adams County. It was then taken in by local animal shelter Wildlife Works. However, experts were unable to determine its species. They believe it must be either a dog or a coyote. The shelter said it was stunned and mortified to learn of the animal's dramatic escape about a week after the rescue. In a Facebook post on Thursday, the wildlife shelter said that they were devastated to find the animal gone. Wildlife rehabilitator Morgan Barron arrived to the rescue building in the morning to find a horrifying sight. The animal's cage was destroyed and the room had been trashed. The animal had managed to force open a window and subsequently tore a hole through the screen. The shelter wrote, "There were scratches on the walls, especially below the window. The window seal was chewed until he was able to force the window open, then he tore through the screen. Not in our wildest dreams did we expect something like this." Pictures posted by the shelter show the door of the cage completely broken. The shelter had been waiting for test results to come back to confirm the species. The post said, "Since he arrived, he's done little more than crouch in the back of his cage and simply follow Morgan with his eyes. He never acted aggressive or distressed, and there has been no evidence of escape attempts. We had him for about a week, during which time he ate nutritious food and received treatment for his mange and secondary infections. We can only guess he was starting to feel somewhat better and decided it was time to go." Following the escape, Barron went out trying to track the animal. The shelter has also left its enclosure doors open with plenty of straw and food to entice it back. When the animal was first found, Barron told NBC News that she leaned towards thinking the animal was a dog because of its timid behavior. However, this escape may determine that the creature is a coyote after all. In a comment on the Facebook post, Betty Johnson Simmons, a member of the public, said, "I would have to think it was a coyote. I cannot imagine a dog doing that type of damage." That's because you have never met my dog, Susan, Miss Betty. Other Facebook users agreed with this theory. While dogs are usually domesticated, coyotes tend to live in the wild, which could explain the animal's dramatic escape. Coyotes are common throughout Pennsylvania and everywhere else, and population levels are rising, making it difficult to estimate exactly how many there are in the state. So, I don't know if you are familiar with this story. It came across my desk because some online were saying that this was a chupacabra. That's what happens. Anytime there is an animal that has been captured or taken to a shelter and it cannot be identified, they have pictures of it. They have the animal on location. We don't know what it is. People say it's a chupacabra. And I'm looking at the picture right now. You need to look it up online. If you haven't seen it, just type in mystery animal in Pennsylvania. You will find it. It's clear that it is a canine of some sort. And it's clear that it is not well. It's very sick. Some people online were saying that they thought maybe it was a deer. If you look at the pictures and you see the eyes, the ears, and the nose, it's clear that it is a canine. To me, the only question was, is it a coyote, is it a dog, or is it some sort of hybrid? Interesting story, because it was a mystery animal. They sent away the DNA testing to find out what it was, and then it escaped. And the pictures of it escaping are pretty wild. To think that this thing got out of the cage, chewed up the window, broke through the screen and took off. I mean, I guess it's possible. On the other hand, maybe somebody broke in and took it and made it look like he escaped. I'm not saying, I'm just saying that's a possibility that we also have to consider, because this story had got a lot of coverage on the news, and a lot of weirdos had come out of the woodwork. A lot of folks had come out of the woodwork to call in threats, to make accusations, to contact the shelter with their opinion about what is happening. Since deciding to cover this story on tonight's show, I've actually just seen a new story that has come out, like I'm just seeing it right now, that apparently the DNA results are back, and this mystery animal is not a chupacabra. You are not the father. It's not a dog. You are not the father. But in fact is a coyote. Apparently one that had mange, and it was pretty sick, because it looks very sad. As someone who loves animals, the picture looks very sad. But apparently they pumped him up with some medicine, and he started to feel better, and he took off. So mystery animal, not a mystery anymore. It was a sick coyote, which is one of the thought processes when it comes to the chupacabra. We covered that on the show a while back. You have to find that episode. A lot of the times people claim this is a chupacabra. It's just something with mange. It's just something sick, my babies. I'm glad the coyote's feeling better. I'm glad he had the strength to seek freedom. I hope he has a happy life, and I hope that he catch that bird. Mystery animal, no more. From Pennsylvania, we go to the tomb of Jesus for our next story. Blood splatter discovered on the Shroud of Turin could belong to Jesus Christ. Along with the Holy Grail and the Spear of Destiny, the Shroud of Turin is one of the most sacred religious relics on the planet. The piece of linen measuring 53 square feet, I didn't know it was that big. That's a lot bigger than I thought it was. And containing the faint image of a man, is believed by millions of Christians from around the world to be the cloth Jesus himself was buried in after death. Ever since a photo negative of the linen captured by Italian amateur photographer Secondo Pia revealed an image of a body over 100 years ago, scores of researchers have analyzed the image as well as the bloodstains and fabric to try and confirm or dismiss the linen's authenticity. But after years and years of studies, tests, and debates, they came to the conclusion that it is still too hard to tell. No one knows for sure. Some say the blood on the cloth belongs to Jesus, while some claim that the face of Jesus was painted on by counterfeiters in medieval times. The biggest focal point for skeptics is a carbon-14 dating conducted in 1988, where a small piece of fabric from the corner of the shroud was sent to labs at the University of Oxford, the University of Arizona, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. All three places confirmed that the material dated back to 1260 and 1390, which is more than 1,000 years after Jesus was alive. That seemed like a huge piece of evidence to dismiss the authenticity of the shroud, but soon researchers found that the carbon dating that came from the top edge of the shroud produced a much different date than the piece taken from the bottom edge of the cloth. But here's the thing. Even if the image was from medieval times and not from the time of Jesus, there's still the mystery of how the image of the man was created in the first place. Every scientific attempt at replicating the image has failed so far. This has caused the Shroud of Turin to become not only one of the most sacred religious relics, but also one of the most mysterious. Recently, researchers in Italy analyzing the Shroud of Turin have discovered the blood of a torture victim on the cloth, thus supporting claims that it may have been used to bury Jesus. The new findings, titled New Biological Evidence from Atomic Resolution Studies on the Turin Shroud, was published in a U.S. scientific journal that was carried out by the Istituto Aficionado dei Materiali in Trieste and the Institute of Crystallography in Bari. The study says that the cloth contains nanoparticles usually not found in the blood of someone healthy. According to Elvio Carlino, a researcher at the Institute of Crystallography in Bari, Italy, the cloth reveals the great suffering of a victim wrapped up in the funeral cloth. According to Professor Gailo Fonti of the University of Padua, the blood contained high levels of creatinine and ferritin, substances found in patients who have suffered from devastating traumas like torture. According to him, the presence of these biological nanoparticles found during our experiments point to a violent death for the man wrapped in the Turin Shroud. The Shroud of Turin has been an intensely debated topic in the world of science ever since. If these findings are true, then they will completely shatter the skeptic theory the image on the cloth was forged by counterfeits. Elvio also said that these findings could only be revealed by the methods recently developed in the field of electron microscopy and the nanoscale properties of a pristine fiber taken from the Turin Shroud. Even though this study sheds a bit of light on this ancient mystery, there are still numerous questions that we have yet to answer. Was this shroud the same exact cloth that Jesus Christ was buried inside when he died? How was the image of the man created on the cloth? Italian physicist Paolo Di Lazzaro told National Geographic, "It's unlikely science will provide a full solution to the many riddles posed by the shroud. A leap of faith over questions without clear answers is necessary, either the faith of skeptics or the faith of believers." If you want to see the shroud for yourself, it is currently on display at St. John the Baptist Cathedral in Turin. At the moment, we can only wait for more evidence regarding the Turin's shroud before we fully reveal its mysterious origins. So, some people are claiming that this is verifiable proof that the Shroud of Turin is the burial cloth used to put Jesus Christ in his tomb. This has always been an interesting subject to me. Every few years, a new study, new scientific evidence comes out, either certifying it as authentic or saying that it is a fake, a forgery. And while I have not seen a successful attempt to recreate the image that is on the shroud, I also do not know that it is impossible to do so. I don't understand how the pyramids were built, but hey, they there. I don't understand how my TV operate, but I turn it on every evening. I would like to see this study peer-reviewed. I would like to see if there's validity to the argument that they're making, if this technology that they use to determine this is a real thing. I've never heard before that the blood of somebody who has been tortured or experienced certain things may be different under a microscope. I've never heard that before, but it's certainly possible. And if nothing else, this is a story of interest, and I thought something worth reporting to you. What do you think? Is the Shroud of Turin legit? Is it a forgery? Does this new evidence actually rise to the level of proof? Or is it just more of the church trying to make it into something when really it's nothing but a piece of cloth, nothing more than an art project from the 1300s? Get at us on Twitter. I would love to hear your opinions about it. From the grave of Jesus, we go to the O'Hare International Airport for our next story. Chicago Aviation Department employee reports Mothman sighting at O'Hare International Airport. That's right, my babies. We going from the tomb of Jesus to the Mothman. Because A, Nobody does the news like In the Shed with Wes. That's why you here, and we appreciate it. Manuel Navarrete of UFO Clearinghouse received a report recently from a woman claiming to be an employee of the Chicago Aviation Department who said that she saw a 7 to 8 foot tall black winged creature with glowing red eyes after leaving work at O'Hare International Airport at approximately 9 p.m. on April 15th. Okay, immediately I have a problem with this article, and maybe it will address this further on as we continue. But it says that the report came in from a woman claiming to be an employee at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Like, that's pretty easy to verify. Like, ask the woman for a picture of her badge, her employee badge. Like, do a little bit of legwork before you hit me with the Mothman sighting. But I digress. According to the woman's report, I wanted to relate a possible sighting of the Chicago Mothman that I had on April 15th, 2021 at approximately 9 p.m. at Chicago O'Hare. I initially was not going to report this and had kept it to myself for fear of someone thinking I had lost my mind and was seeing things. That changed when I read the sighting that was posted on Facebook about a gentleman who had seen the Mothman, not even 2 blocks from where I work. The sighting prompted me to look up a website and eventually send this to you. I work for the Chicago Department of Aviation at the office located on the airport grounds. I've worked there for about 9 years and had previously worked for the airport in another capacity for 5 years prior. I know the airport like I know the palm of my hand, and I've heard stories that people tell about the strange things going on and what happens with surprising frequency. I think you mean you know the airport like the back of your hand. Isn't it the back of, I know that like the back of my hand. I've never heard somebody say like the palm of my hand. Although really I probably know the palm of my hand better than the back. I don't know. What do you know better? Get at us on Twitter. Tell us what part of your hand. No, don't tell us that, please. My sighting happened after I stayed late to catch up on work and had left about 9 p.m. As I walked out of the building into the parking lot, I heard what I could only describe as wings fluttering, kind of like when you hear a bird is going to take off or land. I dismissed it as just geese, as the airport has literally hundreds of them that hang around doing whatever geese seem to do. What followed was a loud screech, nothing like a goose honk, but a very, very loud, ear-splitting screech like what you hear when a train is applying its brakes. Very descriptive. But it was different as it went from a higher octave to a lower one and then higher again. I know it was not a train, as the train tracks are on the other side of the airport about 3 to 4 miles away. I continued walking toward my car when I heard the screech again, and it sounded like it was coming from behind me. That would freak me out. I turned and looked toward the trees over by the road and saw what looked like 2 red eyes looking at me. I sat there looking at those eyes for what seemed like an eternity. I couldn't move, and it felt like the air was being sucked out of my lungs, almost like I was having an asthma attack. I saw this thing emerge from around the trees. It was illuminated from behind by the warehouses that were across the road, and it must have been 7 to 8 feet tall and was black. About this time, a large truck was coming down the road, and it shot into the air and was gone in the matter of a second. I stood there for a few seconds, still too afraid to move, when I finally came to my senses and practically sprinted to my car. I couldn't get into my car fast enough, and as I closed the door, I heard the screech again. I turned on my car and left as quickly as I could. I'm not one for exaggerations, but I felt almost as if I was being stalked. I felt sick to my stomach for 2 to 3 days after that encounter, and it took just as long for the feelings of paranoia to finally go away. It was the feeling of utter and complete hopelessness that disturbed me the most, and it helped contribute to my hesitancy of telling anyone. I didn't even tell my boyfriend of this until after I had decided to send this to you. Navarrete said that he was able to communicate with the witness via email, and after lengthy discussions about her job at the Chicago Aviation Department, she proceeded to tell me about her sighting. The office where she works is located almost directly in line with the structure where the previous submitted winged humanoid sighting occurred, he noted. It's approximately 300 yards away and within visual sight of the office. The sighting referenced by Navarrete came from a man claiming to have seen a large humanoid owl while working as a shuttle bus driver at O'Hare Airport on April 21st. According to Navarrete, the woman advised that she parked on the other side of the building facing the tarmac and cargo offloading area for a pair of long warehouses that housed a multiple of air cargo companies based out of O'Hare. It's also within a city block of a reported sighting last year by a cargo company employee that was submitted to Phantoms and Monsters in approximately 2019. That cargo company employee sighting was investigated by Tobias Wayland of the Singular Fortean Society, who was able to speak with the witness over the phone and later visited the sighting area while filming a documentary for German public television. O'Hare International Airport has been the epicenter of recent winged humanoid sightings in the Lake Michigan Mothman investigation, with over a dozen sighting reports coming from the airport itself since August of 2019, and many more reported in the surrounding communities. Reports from the larger investigation have come from every state bordering Lake Michigan and date back to 1957. This report constitutes the latest news in a string of Mothman sightings from within a few hundred-mile radius surrounding Lake Michigan, including every state bordering the Great Lake. These sightings ostensibly began in the spring of 2017, but more historical accounts are being reported as more people become aware of the phenomenon. Do-do-do-do-do-do, phenomenon. Do-do-do-do, phenomenon. Do-do-do-do-do, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They generally take place in the evening or at night, often in or near a park or natural area and around water. Witnesses consistently describe a large gray-brown or black bat or bird-like creature, although in a small number of cases the creature was described as insect-like, something with glowing or reflective red, yellow, green, or orange eyes, and humanoid features such as arms and legs are often reported. Some witnesses have reported feeling intense fear and an aura of evil emanating from the creature they encountered. That would be me. If I saw something like that, I would feel intense fear. How would you not? How would you not? Many of the sightings are also of something seen only briefly or are described only as a flying creature with few details, which leaves open the possibility that a misidentified large bird, such as a heron or crane, or some type of anomalous avian species could explain some, although certainly not all of the encounters. A number of associated high strangeness incidents have also occurred alongside the creature sightings. These incident reports of UFOs, other anomalous flying creatures, and mysterious humanoids, parapsychological phenomena, and bizarre events experienced by those investigating the sightings. So, apparently, the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago is a breeding ground for the Mothman. I was unaware that there were all these sightings of flying humanoids in Chicago. But it's certainly an interesting thing. To me, of all of these cryptids, if the Mothman fits into that, some people say that he does. Others just see it as a paranormal phenomenon because usually cryptids refer to an undiscovered animal species, and most people think that there's something paranormal about the Mothman. But wherever you classify it, to me, this is one of the more creepy and kind of intimidating things that people have claimed to have seen, because it's something that's 6 to 8 feet tall, that has wings, glowing red eyes, and usually the people that see it experience terror, not just while they see it, but even afterward, experience lack of sleep and being sick at their stomach and having nightmares and all these kinds of things that are associated with it. And I don't know what to think about sightings of flying humanoids. It's so easy to just throw it out and say these people are crazy or they're hoaxers or they're making something up. But the fact that it's not one or two people or even 10, but dozens and dozens of people, and a lot of them in the same area, it kind of makes you think that probably something is going on. Like probably something is happening in this area. I don't know. What are they seeing? Is there a pterodactyl out there? Is there some type of really large bird that people just are unfamiliar with? Is there some species of bat that is much larger than normal, and when the light is shining on it in a certain way, you think that it's much larger than it is? I don't know. But when you have dozens and dozens of people who claim to have seen something as large as an NBA center with glowing red eyes and wings appear before them and take off and fly away into the sky, that's pretty creepy. Like, that's kind of scary. And while I'm quick to dismiss or at least to be skeptical of crazy claims, I'm not quick to dismiss entire groups of people who have claimed to see something that we can't make sense of just because we can't make sense of it. And when so many people report to have seen something all in the same area, that falls into this category for me. Category. I always say category. I can't dismiss it. If dozens of people are seeing it all in the same area, they're not sure what they've seen, but they've seen something that is beyond explanation or understanding. I can't throw it out immediately. I don't know. I don't know what it is. An angel, a demon, a bird, a bat, a very large black goose. I don't know. But it's interesting. I would love to talk to one of those people that have seen it. I would love to hear their account firsthand. And I know for sure that, like the person in this story, I too would be terrified. And I know that the person in the story was communicating through email, which is a written form of communication. And I know when you're trying to describe something that seems unbelievable, that you might try to do as good a job as you can of describing it. But it seemed a lot like fiction, and a lot like a written narrative. The description was a little overdone. It seemed like somebody trying to write some fan fiction. I have questions. Was it verified this woman worked at the airport? Who else was around? Did anyone else see it? Did anyone else hear this noise? Because if there's this screeching noise, it sounded like the brakes of a train. Somebody else probably heard it. Do you have a second person? I have questions, but I also can't write it off because a lot of people in the area have seen something. They've seen something. For our last story this week in the world of the paranormal, we go to the human mind and history. The human mind, I would say, and also history. 30 creepy superstitions you don't even realize that you've been practicing. Yeah, we're going to talk superstitions, my babies. We're going to take a look at 30 of them that apparently we do not even know, but that we practice. And I haven't seen this list yet. I'm going to see it right now for the first time along with you. We're going to go through the superstitions and see how many of them are true for us. Number 1, middle names. People made middle names and then didn't tell others what it was because in order to put a curse on someone, you need their full name. If someone has a legal middle name and you don't know it, then you can't curse them. So not telling people your middle name is a superstition based on curses. I don't know Anthony Davis's middle name, but he has seemed to curse the Lakers. I hope you get better soon, AD. That was just a joke. Don't everybody get upset with me. I don't know. I have seen people that are slow to tell others their middle name. I don't really care. I'll tell you my middle name. It's Wesley. That's where the West comes from, in Wes Anderson. I go by my middle name. My name is Wesley. So number 1, no, I don't practice that one. No. Number 2, the fear of black cats comes from the 13th century when Pope Gregory announced to Europe that black cats were witches' consorts with the devil. This led to mass cat genocide, wherein not only black ones were being murdered in masses. And that's so sad. Why did you have to do that, Gregory? You sound like a terrible person. There ain't nothing wrong with a black cat. I do not practice this superstition. I have a black cat. His name is Bernie. He's incredible. I'm an animal person, not a dog person or a cat person. We have both. I just appreciate animals. And that dude, Bernie, is the coolest cat that you ever done seen in the world. He's named after one of my favorite comedians, Bernie Mac, that passed away too early. Rest in power, Bernie. But my cat Bernie is amazing, and he's not scary. He's not a consort with the devil. That man is dope. Number 3, people frequently describe sharp, sudden pains as stabbing pains, and in distant history thought they were actually caused by invisible arrows fired by woodland elves called elf shot. Yeah, everybody know about elf shot. That's what... No, I do refer to those as stabbing pains. I think we all have used that vernacular before, but I did not know it came from the belief that little woodland elves were shooting you with invisible arrows. I don't think that's why that happens, but I guess I do give in to that superstition because I do refer to them as stabbing pains. Number 4, dressing up at Halloween was to ward off ghouls by outsmarting them. I would like to fact check that. I've never heard that before. If that's true, I didn't know it. But I be dressing up, so I guess I do that one as well. I be dressing up. Number 5, pumpkins at Halloween were derived from a tradition of putting carved turnips outside to scare away a guy that tricked the devil. Huh. Again, that is something that I've never heard before. I would think it would be a lot easier to carve a pumpkin than a turnip. But I do be having a carved pumpkin out on my porch. So I do practice that superstition. Number 6, the use of wind chimes. A lot of people forget that they were once a ward against evil spirits. And I don't use them because I find them to be aggravating. I know everybody grandmama got some wind chimes at their house. I can't do it. I don't find it to be pretty or melodic. I find it to be aggravating and annoying. And I'm a hater of wind chimes. Don't hop up in my DMs or my mentions crucifying me for not liking wind chimes. I don't find them to be fun. I find them to be annoying. I do not practice that superstition. So we threw 6. And so far I practice half of them. Number 7, covering your mouth when you yawn. It was originally thought the devil would sneak in if you didn't. For real. That's why I thought it was just polite. I guess it is polite not to let the devil in. Better lock my casket tight, baby, so I don't let the devil in. That's Wheezy. Wheezy F, baby. Yeah, I do cover my mouth. I do that one. Number 8, around here, a lot of people learned that if you leave your flip-flops or shoes face down on the ground, your mother will die. Now that seems extreme. Even for a superstition, you put your flip-flops upside down, your mama gonna die. I've never heard that in my life. I do not practice that one. If you do, I don't know what to tell you. Number 9, making noise at midnight on New Year's Eve to scare away the evil spirits. What in the world? I thought we was just celebrating the fact that we made it another year. That, hey, we all still here. We survived, especially the last couple of New Year's Eves. Of course I make noise at midnight. I cheer. I give my wife a kiss. Yay. I didn't know where that came from, but I practice it. The count's up to 5. Number 10, blowing out birthday candles. It's not well known, but this stems from a tradition which paid tribute to the goddess Artemis and was thought to be auspicious. Okay, so blowing out birthday candles is somehow connected to Artemis. Never heard that before. Everybody blow out candles. We had 6. Number 11, pretty sure death will come to me if I ever open an umbrella indoors. And when I see someone do it, I automatically wince because I know their life force is about to be taken from them. Of course, I've heard that one. It's bad luck to open an umbrella indoors. Just to be honest with you, an umbrella at 32 years of age just happens to be something that I have never owned. I've never had an umbrella. My wife has one up under the seat of her car. I've used that to walk her to the door before because I'm a gentleman and chivalry is not dead. But I've never had an umbrella. I just put on a ball cap and I just walk through the rain. It don't bother me. It's just water. It's just water. H2O. Your body needs it. So drink it. We still at 6. Number 12. Saying bless you when someone sneezes was originally ordered by a pope in the Middle Ages to ward off plague. Man, a lot of these superstitions come from the pope, don't they? These popes be giving us some crazy stuff to do. I do say bless you, so I'm up to number 7. I don't know what your count is, but mine is 7. Number 13, not speaking ill of the dead, so that they do not come back to haunt you. I thought we was just being respectful. If somebody's dead, even if they weren't a good person, I'm not going to say too many bad things about them. I guess I do practice that one. I'm at 8. Number 14, clinking glasses and saying cheers before you take a sip of your drink. If I remember correctly, it used to be a thing in feudal England where warring factions made peace with each other by clinking their huge beer and ale mugs, thereby spilling a bit of their drink into the other person's mug to ensure that they haven't been poisoned. For real? That was a test to make sure that you weren't poisoned. No kidding. Never heard that before in my life. Of course, I have clinked glasses together and said cheers. I'm at 9. Number 15. Church bells at a funeral are actually to ward off evil spirits who would take the deceased's soul to hell. I only know this because my grandmother explicitly did not want them at her funeral because it's a pagan custom, according to her. I've never died. I've never rung a church bell in my life, so I have not practiced that one. So many of these superstitions exist to protect you from evil spirits, which is interesting to me. I'm still at 9. Number 16, 666 is the devil's number, or that the pentacle and pentagram are going to summon demons. Christianity is so seeped in Western culture that we take basic things and turn them into fearful superstitions. Yeah, so actually 666, the view of it in that way comes from a misunderstanding of a scripture in the book of Revelation, it being the mark of the beast. But I will say, if I'm at Subway or the gas station and my total come up to 666, I'm going to throw a pack of gum up on the counter. I'm buying something else, or I'm getting some cash back or something. I'm not afraid of it. I don't know why I do it. I'm not scared of it. It don't have no power. But it's still a superstition that I adhere to a little bit. So I'll say that puts me at 10. Number 17, the purpose of bridesmaids was to confuse and protect the bride from being snatched by the fae? I don't know what that is. The purpose of bridesmaids was to confuse and protect the bride from being snatched? I don't know what the fae is or who out here snatching these brides. But apparently there was some paranormal creature out here trying to steal brides. And so they had bridesmaids. So she wouldn't know who to take, or he. I don't know if the fae is typically a woman's name. I don't know what it is. I've never had bridesmaids, but there were some for my wife at our wedding. So I guess I have to say I practiced that one as well. And that puts me at 11. 11 superstitions practiced out of 17 so far. Number 18, bad luck comes in threes. I usually see this in the context of celebrity deaths. I've heard people say that one before. I don't think that I've ever really much said that. Have not put any stock in that. I do not practice that one. Number 19, the devil. People in this century, people who wear suits and run political campaigns, believe that an evil spirit with horns is plotting to destroy them. I'm at 12 now. Number 20, nurses will murder people who say a shift is quiet. We aren't allowed to say the Q word. I don't believe it, but it's fun to give each other heck about saying it or getting to blame someone when stuff hits the fan. There is a belief that nurses will murder people who say that a shift is quiet. I got some nurses in the family. I'm about to have to call them after this episode and be like, hey, are you allowed to say the word quiet when you're working in the hospital? I do not practice that suspicion. We still at 12. Number 21, wedding rings on your left ring finger. Supposedly, there's a vein there that goes directly to your heart, so keeping your love symbol close to your heart fills your marriage with love. That's kind of sweet. Right after Valentine's Day, I actually don't ever think that I've ever questioned. I've never even questioned why we wear wedding rings on that particular finger. I just figured it would look weird on a thumb or a pinky. The bird finger and the pointer finger are used for other purposes, so that was the one that was left. I don't know. But yes, I practiced that one. I actually lost my wedding ring. Had it for about 4 years. Lost it. Couldn't find it. Took a metal detector out to where it was lost on multiple occasions. Couldn't find it. So your boy went and got a tattoo of a wedding ring. I don't plan on losing that one unless somebody take my whole finger, but I don't have gambling debts. We at 13. Number 22, I know a couple of Japanese ones. The more well-known is that the number 4 is a bit unlucky because it sounds like death. Never heard that one, don't practice it. We still at 13. Number 23, Chinese people set fireworks off on New Year's to ward off evil spirits. Here we go with the evil spirits again. Since they invented them, we could say the origin of fireworks was superstitious. Yeah, I don't know. On Mulan, they use them in war, but that's just a Disney film that doesn't have very much to do with the history of China. I mean, I shoot off fireworks, but not on New Year's, so I'm going to say I don't practice that superstition, and I'm still at 13. Number 24, for many sit-down Chinese restaurants like buffets, you have to turn left or right twice before actually getting into the restaurant. That is to confuse demons. For many sit-down Chinese restaurants like buffets, you have to turn left or right twice before actually getting into the restaurant to confuse demons. Huh. Still at 13. Number 25, kissing on New Year's, thought to purify each other of evil for the new year. I have already confessed to this one. I look forward to watching that ball drop and pretending that the new year is going to be better than the last one and all of our problems will disappear. And I give my wife a kiss because she's the most beautiful person that I've ever known in my life. I do practice that one, 14. Number 26, holding your breath when driving by a cemetery. Huh. I've never heard that one before. I hold my breath when I drive over a bridge because it's fun, and when the bridge is a long bridge, the people in the car think I'm going to pass out, and that's a lot of fun too. But I've never held my breath when driving by a cemetery. I don't know why you would, and I'm not familiar with that superstition, so I'm still at 14. Number 27, walking under a ladder. I suppose there are a couple of reasons not to do that. Yes, of course I am familiar with walking under a ladder, supposedly bringing years of bad luck. But I've done it on multiple occasions in my life, usually as a child, just to be like, ha 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 ha, walking under a ladder, I'm going to get the bad luck, you can't really stop me. Because I was that kid. And sometimes I'm that adult. But I don't practice that superstition, and my life has turned out awesome. I think I'm just have a riveting life. Still at 14. Number 28. Not sitting 13 people at a table, not having a 13th floor on an office building. My building just renovated one of their elevators, and I was amused to see that they had eliminated the number 13 from the brand new control panel. Superstition dies hard. And so does Bruce Willis. And we don't know his full name, so we cannot cast a spell on him. I am familiar with this, of course, the number 13 being bad luck. I've never bought into it. It doesn't bother me. I'm not superstitious about it at all. But I do find it funny when I'm staying at a hotel and there's not a 13th floor. Like, they skip it. I'm like, hey, we all know what floor we on. You're not fooling anybody. We still at 14. Number 29, luck. You'll find that just about everyone has little things they do in order to affect their luck. Whether it's avoiding cracks on sidewalks to ward off bad luck, you don't want to break your mama back, or blowing on dice before a throw to bring good luck. Okay, we have 15 now. And if you say that there's nothing you do like that, you're probably not telling the truth. I don't care about stepping on cracks. My mama back fine. But if I thought about it long enough, I could come up with a bunch of things I do. I know one thing I do is if I'm watching a football game and my team has had a really bad first half, sometimes at halftime I'll switch hats. And I know that that's crazy. I know that that is illogical. It doesn't make any sense. The hat that is on my head is in no way affecting the game. But I will. I'll switch hats. We have 15. Number 30, knocking on wood to make sure we don't jinx anything. I'll say I'm guilty of that superstition. I don't actually knock on wood, but I do use that phrase and that terminology from time to time. Knock on wood. So yeah, that's 30 superstitions that you practice that you might not even realize. Are you counting with me? What was your count? How superstitious are you? Because mine wound up being 16. And I have to be honest, that is a lot higher than I anticipated. That's over half of them that your boy practices, and I ain't even realize it. So I guess the title of the article was mostly correct. I want to know about you guys. How many of those do you practice? Of those 30, go back and listen to them. Keep your count. Get your count. Let me know. Tweet at the show at InTheShed4. Follow us on Twitter and get at us there. Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. And let me know, are you more superstitious than me? Are you less superstitious than I am? What was your count? Mine was at 16. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 34. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports, or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at InTheShed4. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk some sports, and investigate together the disappearance of an entire town. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scout. Meemaw, we made it!